In just a moment, you'll hear 4 of Emily Dickinson's poems, and then following, you'll hear a reflection by me on each one of the poems, just my thoughts, maybe some poetic discussion, device usage, and that kind of thing, but mostly just my thoughts as I reread the poems. So stay tuned for that. As for Emily Dickinson herself, in her 56 years, one source said that she had 1,775 poems written in her lifetime. So these 4 that I'm reading are just a drop in the bucket. But she was a very mysterious person. Some people said she was very depressed and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure, but some of the things that I've read about her seem that she was very dedicated, energetic even, and purposeful in what she did, writing so many poems in such a short amount of time of life, and developing her own literary style, which one person, his name was Higginson, he recognized and helped her to get established, as I understand it. But most of her things were not published until after her death, and even though she was eccentric, didn't leave her house in that, and she reportedly dressed only in white in the last few years of her life, those kinds of things highlight her personality, and yet I think that she still had a great purpose in her writing and discussion of things as she put them down in a style and form that may have been unique, but that is one reason why she is considered one of the greatest poets I think around to ever to have lived, but especially a greatest poet of American literature. So I hope you enjoy Emily Dickinson. I heard a fly buzz when I died, by Emily Dickinson. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. The eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsakes, signed away what portion of me be assignable, and then it was there imposed a fly, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me, and then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. Water is taught by thirst. Water is taught by thirst, land by the ocean's past, transport by throe, peace by its battles told, love by memorial mold, birds by the snow. There is a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us, we can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it, any. 'Tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction, sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. The brain is wider than the sky. The brain is wider than the sky, for, put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease, and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for, hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb, as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for, heft them pound for pound, and they will differ, if they do, as syllable from sound. I heard a fly buzz when I died, of course, has Emily Dickinson's trademark dash use, but I always really love the pauses that it creates by adding those things. Hearing the fly immediately to me brings forth the idea of death. And then when I died is just a narrative genius moment for me, because it puts you in a position of thinking, well, she already died, so we're actually listening to Emily Dickinson as a disembodied voice. How is this working? And then the scene gets set. The stillness in the room, of course it has to be still, was like the stillness in the air, this simile that's being created, so we're really engaged in listening of what it is that it's like. And she, again, breaks all expectations between the heaves of storm. My life, our lives, are oftentimes these great upheavals of learning and storms and suffering and things that are not always happy, especially in Emily Dickinson's life. She hovers over these things. But then this great heave, as if it's a grief of some kind of these storms. But she heard this between those heaves, between the moments of pain, as it were. And of course, this is my interpretation. The eyes around, the eyes of the fly, the eyes of the room, so many different things you could think about there, had wrung them dry. Maybe the eyes of God, and breaths were gathering firm for that one last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. The king, is the king God, or is the king death, or is the king just this lonely fly? I willed my keepsakes, the things that are most important to her, she signed away. She just gave them away in this moment, in this time, between the veil of life and death. She signed them away. What portion of me to be assignable? Whatever I could give to them, I did. And then it was, there interposed a fly. I am nearing death, and I'm going to give everything that I have here, and I'm just allowing the storm to overtake me. And then a fly. How rude. With blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz, as if this fly is imperfect somehow, just like a, what is going on? I'm dying? And then, oh, look. I love the like sounds of the words that she uses. Blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz. This sound use in the not just in meter, but in the literal phonemes that she chooses to identify here. Between the light and me, between the light as in death and me. And when the windows failed, again, the windows in the room or the windows of my eyes, it just kind of left up for interpretation, I think. And then I could not see to see. I still don't know. At the moment of death, at the moment that I am closest to seeing the other side, I still don't see it. I still don't see what's there, what possibilities are, or what nothingness is. And she has nothing to give besides really the beauty of the process of submission, as it were, to this natural force of death in our lives. Water is taught by thirst. I love the comma usage here. Water is taught by thirst. Land by the ocean's past. It's the yin and yang for me. You can't have this without that. Water is wonderful, but it only is amazing or wonderful because we understand what it means to want. The land is fantastic, is beautiful, but we don't have anything to compare land to unless we have that ocean. And then transport, this, I think she means like this rapture, because throw means a spasm of pain, or you're in the throes of something, as it were. You're in rapture, but you're also in pain. And then you're in peace, but peace is only matters because of the battle that you have gone through. And then love, Love is only told by memorial mold. I love mold, double connotation of like death mold growing on empty tombs or whatever, but memorial mold is just like cemeteries, probably. Um, uh, Something that holds the memory of a loved one. We only know love by that grief. I'm not sure I didn't agree with her there, but it highlights the duality here within this short poem. And then birds by the snow. What a great, all these wonderful emotional and philosophical things, but to tie it together with just need and then just something that's there in nature. Birds by snow. Um, Brings it back to the simple with all these profound things before. There is a certain slant of light. There is? What kind of slant of light? It's the first thing that pops into my mind. And then she builds on that. Winter afternoons. Oh, yes, winter afternoon. But what? They oppress this certain slant of light. It oppresses like a heft, like the weight and gravity of that bass boom of cathedral tunes. The line breaks in this poem, for me, are amazing. She has these four stanzas, so the second stanza begins with heavenly hurt. The cathedral tunes should bring glory to heaven, and yet they're oppressing the heavens, as in the literal heavens, but maybe even the heavens of God. Heavenly hurt. It gives us, that's what it gives to us. We can find no scar. We can find no point, as it were, no remembrance. All we see is internal difference. And then the following line, where the meanings are. This is where the meaning is all of these things that have been built upon in the last two stanzas. None may teach it. Interesting. None of us, no person understands the weight of these things, the certain slant of light, the impact of nature, or maybe solitude, or the oppression of weight that we feel in our lives sometimes. 'Tis the seal despair. I suppose that's what she's talking about, is this feeling of depression, of despair, of helplessness against all these things. It is an imperial affliction. Of course, that line, I think, is probably made famous now because of John Green, in his book The Fault in Our Stars, that affliction that we have towards death, and we must confront it, but really it's the affliction of loneliness more than the state of death that we pass into, but the pre-state of death that heightens those things because we feel alone and helpless. It has sent us of the air. Again, maybe a reference to nature. She's a transcendentalist, or maybe it is a inadvertent reference to the soul, over soul, the soul of God, as a transcendentalist might think. When it comes, the landscape listens. There's that naturalistic viewpoint. Shadows hold their breath. Very creepy, mysterious, but also it's like the shadows are in worry that slant of light might break them. I feel like there's maybe a calling out for hope, but she doesn't want to quite give it to us. And when it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death, as it's passive, as it doesn't really care, it seems like to me. I could just talk about this one for hours and interpret it, and of course we could always go through her meter and line breaks like in the next one as well. But I just think that the ideas that are presented and the thoughts in each line, and as they compound on each other, are the point, and the greatest point of interest, at least for me. And then there's the brain is wider than the sky. I think this is one of my favorite ones. It's probably fairly simple, as her poems go. The break itself, the brain, as a pause, and then statement is wider than the sky. What exactly does that mean? There's so much in that first line. It's amazing. And then the use of dash right after that in the second line, for, put them side by side, like purposeful pauses for our reflection and a building of tension. The one the other will contain. It's amazing that the brain can contain the sky, and yet the sky contains the brain in a weird way, because there is a transmutation of understanding here. I don't know. The brain is deeper than the sea. For doubling of stanzas here and just put in different context. Hold them blue to blue. I'm not sure the brain is blue, or her understanding of that maybe is depression. But you can see the point here. The brain is deeper than the sea. The depth of what we can store, the one the other will absorb. We need each other. It's a dichotomy of understanding of the beauty of nature. It seems like nature is purposeless without consciousness, and consciousness is purposeless without nature's revealing of the ineffable. Again, I think it's leading us towards a more divine conversation, as sponges, buckets do, things that hold and absorb, but don't ever truly contain or grasp the vastness and weight of it, but do understand it in a simple sense. And then this line is amazing. The brain is just, as it's almost this flippant comment, it's just the weight of God. The brain holds our understanding of who God is, because God, again, is in nature, that kind of general revelation, maybe idea, but through a transcendental lens. Heft them, weigh them pound for pound, and they will differ, if they do, as syllable from sound. I love that last line, especially because a syllable is a function, is almost a tangible thing when written out, but it is just a production of sound. But put those productions of sounds together, those syllables, those phonemes, those small notes, wavelengths, as it were, you put them in combination and sequence, and you have life, you have creation, you have beauty, but it's the sequence that creates. It's the sequence that brings forth some kind of understanding, and the mathematical probability of any of these things coming together for them to work as one is just, it's interesting to think about, I guess, just like all of her poems are interesting to think about. And again, you can just talk on them for ages, but my point here is just to give some reflective ideas and not go into the analysis of the meter and the rhyme scheme as this, and her use of syntax and diction, or her use of stanzas as a function, and commas and dashes and blah blah. You can go forever into those kinds of ideas, but what does it really reflect for you, and how are you understanding it, I think is part of the power of poetry, not just all those other things that we can dissect. So I hope you've enjoyed my reflective ideas on Emily Dickinson's poems, and if you like this, then let me know, and maybe we can do more.